Good afternoon, Salt Lake City. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio.
And it's not just Salt Lake City. I mean, we're all over the state, as well as our podcast if you're tuning in through there on Spreaker or iHeartRadio. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are and whatever you're doing and whenever you're listening.
Thanks for listening regardless. But yeah, absolutely. We're glad to be back in the studio after being gone for a couple of weeks at Festival of Trees last week, and that was a lot of fun.
And Thanksgiving the week before, we were both asleep during our regular segment, so thank you, tryptophan and the turkey.
Nap, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I was fully awake. Well, we've got an awesome show today. I'm kind of stoked about this topic. We've been bouncing this topic around for a few weeks, waiting, anticipating, and getting excited for today.
Putting a lot of thought into it because I think if we break prepping down to its most basic, most essential, is kind of where this topic took us. And it was, for me, it was a little bit, I see kind of an unexpected awakening for me, I guess a little bit. Awakening's a little strong, but a realization, I guess, to say, okay, I need to put a little more emphasis on this aspect of prepping.
Okay.
It's so basic, it's kind of where we should all start. And that's
I look at it like, okay, anytime you start a business, you've got to put together a business plan, right? That's what all the gurus tell you, which I think is bullcrap.
Okay.
What I look at is a probability and action plan.
Okay, right, instead of just a business plan.
Because a business plan is the touchy-feely,
broad.
Oh, this is what we're going to do and stand for and be. Whereas an action plan is, this is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to measure if it's effective or not, and then adapt and change. I think that's just as important, if not more important, than a business plan or strategy.
Well, you are the one with the MBA, so.
True, and basically that just means more bull and other stuff.
More expense, more time.
More expensive. But what I found is in my prepping, it's the same thing. It's, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And how do I do it? And how do I make sure I'm getting it done? Because that's where most people, I think, get stuck in the world of preparedness or prepping. They'll freeze because they don't know how to make that action plan or they don't know where to start. So I think that's why today is so exciting, because we're talking about where to start, how to start. We'll talk about threats a little bit later, but assessing the threats, understanding the threats, and creating an action plan today and then following through on it, that's really where we are right now. That's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah, prepping is about being prepared. I mean, obviously that's pretty obvious there, but you cannot be adequately prepared if you don't first identify your threats, the dangers, and I guess recognizing what those dangers might be.
Yeah.
Doing that exercise of looking around in your community, in your neighborhood, in your region, and so forth, on assessing threats, dangers that are personal, family, and so forth. This is the reason why we start prepping, right? This is the reason behind all our prepping. So we need to start here.
And it's kind of like, have you ever done a SWOT analysis? Have you ever heard of that? SWOT.
I have heard of it.
W-O-T.
Remind me.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a 4-quadrant analysis, right? And so oftentimes when I've done that exercise with associates in different jobs that I've done, the weaknesses and threats are kind of the less focused on.
Because
they want to focus on strengths and opportunities.
Focus on the positive, right?
The threats and the weaknesses are the two places you really need to spend more time, because then they become less of an issue. So then you can reroute all of your energies into those strengths and those opportunities, right? So today is the assessing of the threats. Today is the assessing of your weaknesses. Like if you're not preparing for anything and you lose your job and you haven't got savings, and you haven't got a pantry full of food.
I've been there.
You don't have anything to rely on.
Okay, check this one out. Now, this is something I came across, and as part of my preparing for this week and the last couple of weeks, is, we talk about the survival rules of 3 all the time, probably to a fault, right? This one came up to me, and it makes perfect sense. One thing we don't talk about a lot is that you can only survive 3 minutes without air, right? Well, that's important, but, what else are you going to do about it? You learn how to swim, right?
True.
That's one thing.
Learn how to float.
Right, exactly. But even what would you suspect would come even before that is more critical in a shorter amount of time than air? This is one I came across. Situational awareness. 3 seconds. You need to take a survey of your situation, where you ever find yourself, and in 3 seconds be able to assess that situation. You need that 3 second situation. And I don't know if I totally agree, but I thought it was a nice insight that that kind of woke me up there.
That's
Because we
that's
talk
a
about
tough one to
situation.
do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
In
absolutely.
3 seconds, you walk into a restaurant, assess the situation. In 3 seconds, can you see the full restaurant? No, you can't give it a full assessment.
But I think that's mainly just saying, okay,
Where
this
are
is
my
probably
exits?
more important than air. At that point,
Yeah.
you walk into a room and you got a gun pointed at you. I mean, you got only a few seconds to react. I mean, that's an extreme example, but
Well, my buddy Ben, who's a former FBI agent, he always talks about this topic, and this is his most important topic for himself. And one of the interesting things I found is that he spends more time hanging back and kind of backing himself into the corner to watch everything than he does interacting with other people, which I'm like, okay, to a fault, it's too much time away. But he's very observant of his surroundings in a fantastic way. So there's got to be like a balance in there.
Yeah, so maybe you take that first 3 seconds as a quick glimpse. Yeah, as a quick glimpse, and then from there you can maybe, like you say, step back and take another minute or so to observe the room or your surroundings, your situation. But yeah, take those 3 seconds to, as you walk into an area, okay, I'm safe, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's really what this kind of survival comes down to, is making a safe place for each of us, right?
So grab your papers and grab your pens. It's workshop time. What are the threats that you're concerned about? What are the threats maybe you haven't prepared for that are looming? Now, we don't focus on the doomsday scenarios. We're not trying to instill fear. We're trying to instill a success mind frame.
And we're also looking back into history and seeing, okay, what has happened in the past and what do we have to look for in the future? Because most likely what we've seen happen in the past is going to repeat itself. History repeats itself, or if it doesn't repeat itself, it at least rhymes, right?
Yeah. I mean, Rome fell. A great example. Societies can
Well,
collapse.
that can't happen again. That's not going to happen to us.
You know, look down south. What's going on in Venezuela still?
Oh, yeah.
It's insanity. You know, there are people that are doing okay, but majority of people, society's kind of failed to a degree down there.
And it's
What's
not getting
going
any
on
better.
here in America? I mean, I saw a chart just yesterday that showed crime, broken homes. It showed poverty lines. It showed everything for the United States in a heat map to show, and it was absolutely interesting to me that the lowest education, the highest propensity for crime, the highest propensity for broken homes, meaning absentee parent of some kind, all of these charts, it showed the southern United States as the most in danger within all of those categories because of the scenarios that they're facing. I mean, the society down there is different culturally.
Very different culturally, yeah.
And there's not a lot of support to help people be more independent. You know, but there's also a larger population there than there is in the northeastern areas or northwestern areas. So like Utah is looking good, Colorado's looking good, Wyoming's looking great, but who lives in Wyoming? I mean, I lived there for a little while, and there's not a lot of
low
people
population.
there.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see what the different threats are based on where you live culturally.
Yeah,
and not
absolutely.
just, hey, there's an EMP or hey, there's a nuke. It's what societally or what socioeconomically is contributing or affecting where you live and how your family may respond or how your group may respond to what's going on locally. That's a type of a threat assessment you need to look at.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
That's one I didn't have on my list. So that's a great one.
I didn't have it on my list, but as I was
popped in
thinking
your
last
head,
night, it kind of resurfaced today. But how often are we confronted with a unfair scenario in life? Right? I think someone's screaming, "That's unfair" every day.
Yeah.
Somewhere in some part of the world. I mean, I've screamed it myself. We have to learn to adapt and work with those types of things. And so identifying what those could be before they actually happen to you is the key that's going to save you. It's that extra 3 seconds up front.
So the process is, what I want to try and outline today is that, okay, we need to first, you have to acknowledge, you have to basically take that risk assessment. What is it that we need to be concerned about? What dangers are there? We need to identify the dangers, those threats. And then after you identify them, okay, what's the next step? You kind of have to assess your situation. Okay, where do I fit in? Where do we fit into this situation? And then from there, you can figure out, okay, how are we going to prepare? How do I manage that? Exactly.
Yeah.
How do I mitigate dangers? And I think subconsciously, or maybe not, maybe even on a higher level than that, we work on that every single day.
Yep.
Especially if you have kids. I mean, you're constantly assessing the danger, the threat that they might be under at the moment, and it's become natural. It's become habit. I mean, it's become life. Okay, I'm watching after my kids. Oh, don't do that. You're going to fall off the couch. I mean, that's a very simple example, but I think we all do it on a level, because I think part of our, I don't want to call it genetic, part of our nature, our genetic code is to survive, and to create a safe place wherever we go. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And I know Scott and I we always have different ways of approaching particular topics, and so this was the approach that, as I began to prepare and think about this topic today, it's like, okay, this makes more sense of how we can express this and talk to you guys about it.
Yeah. So starting off, you're identifying what threats could be, right? Just throwing out a few ideas of what you could write down. Obviously, the big ones like nuke, finance or economic, terror or terrorist, active shooters, grid down, cyber attack, natural disasters like floods, fires, earthquakes, joblessness, losing a job.
And I think that's a great place to start, because we first reach out to our ready radius of what Scott and I call it. Is that, okay, what's most immediately close to us? I've got my EDC gear, I've got my vehicle, I've got my home, and I'm inside my community. So I think we need to start in a small circle.
Start
small, exactly. And it's, okay, what's my immediate danger? Okay, there's a number of people over here that, okay, maybe you have to be concerned about. And you reach out from there to your city. What threats are there in your city? What threats are there in the larger community and in the state and a larger regional? Like you say, there's threats of nuclear. That's obviously a global threat.
Absolutely.
So, and I think what I'm getting at here is that we need to create a priority, right? And this helps us to buy the preps we need, to make the plans we need by having that prioritized list, which immediately our immediate needs are shelter, water, and food, right? Just like the survival rules of three.
Right. And I think what it comes down to is simply this. It's educate and then outfit, right?
Okay.
In real estate, they get E&O insurance, errors and omissions, right? We want to do educate and outfit. That's our insurance for life, right? Like so what we want to do is get educated on the threats that affect you first. Do a prioritization, find out what's going to affect you first. What could affect you the quickest? Could it be a disability? Could it be a car accident? Are you living on the edge? If you're living on the edge, be prepared for some kind of repercussions of those actions. If you're an action sports enthusiast,
yeah, absolutely,
you'll probably break, rotator cuff and have some issues.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, is that, okay, if you're doing a particular activity and you're good at that and you've done a lot of it, you're aware of the risks and the threats. So when I'm in, I know I've used this example before, when I'm in the mountains, what I notice, and I wear glasses, so I have not the greatest eyesight, so my ears become more attuned to what's going on around me. So when I'm in a rugged area, I listen for rockfall. I mean, that's the thing that my ears just turn on to is rockfall and noises that it shouldn't be around. I mean,
yes,
just not normal noises. Those are things, and so I'm automatically tuned into that particular threat in that particular area. So I think after we come back from break here, we're going to talk about, okay, maybe we list our top 5 or 6 whatever threats that we should be aware of and
let's pick 4, and then we'll go through the action steps with you on how to assess for it, how to educate for it, and then how to outfit for it. What we're trying to do is help you create a mitigation plan. That's what prepping is you're mitigating the challenges so that you're lessening them.
Perfect, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for listening here on Prepper Talk Radio on this Friday afternoon. We're so happy to be with you. We will catch you guys after the break. All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio. You're on K-Talk. We're so happy to be with you this afternoon.
And you can find us at preppertalkradio.com or on Facebook, Prepper Talk Radio. It's pretty simple to find, just facebook.com/Prepper Talk Radio. Give us a follow, sign up for our newsletter on our website, and get informed on things that are coming down the pipeline. We're also adding some things to the website. For example, we've got our new morale patch on there. So if you want to get a Prepper Talk Radio logo morale patch, they're pretty boss. I think they're awesome.
I like them. I think you did a good
So you
job.
can get them on
definitely.
the website. But we're going to be adding a few more products here in the next couple of weeks. But check out the website, check out all of our fun, and engage with us
On Facebook, yeah.
throughout the week on
We love
Facebook.
it. And if you have something to say about today's topic, you can call us at 801-254-1640. We're talking about assessing threats, assessing our threats as in our community, in our homes, and how to prepare for those particular threats. Because that's
Absolutely.
really where we start as preppers is we notice a threat of some sort, something that's dangerous, and we prepare for it. I mean, just like a mom with her diaper bag, right? What are the threats that she analyzes there? Oh, being out and
What if I'm gone too
having
long?
an accident, right?
What if the baby has a blowout? That's one we've
exactly.
dealt with a lot lately. A lot. She's 7 months old. Last month she
Blowout.
had an infection. The amoxicillin gave her diarrhea.
Right.
She had blowouts 3 times a day. So you had to have 2 to 3 extra outfits planned, plus the diapers, plus the wipes,
All the
plus
formula, the extra water in
plus
the bottles.
water. Like we always carry enough water in the bag so that we don't have to go find water, right? And so that we don't have to wonder, is this water safe for my baby?
Right, yeah.
Oh, heaven forbid, it's water out of the tap. Oh, no. But those are things that you worry about.
Yeah,
That's-
absolutely. So that's what it is. It's just a simple practice of identifying what threats are immediate threats in your neighborhood, in your immediate area, and has to do with where you are geographically.
So let's talk about it from a radius standpoint.
Okay,
right?
cool.
Closest thing that could affect you. Bodily harm. Right?
Okay,
Injuries.
personal injury, people, the golden
Family.
horde, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
joblessness, those things that could affect really, and by this we're talking about, okay, what could affect your current lifestyle, your family. I think the number one threat is joblessness or an injury or an unprepared illness, right? You can't prepare for everything, but you can try to prepare as much as you can to mitigate these things. For example, identify that down, right? Write down, let's just go with the idea of a job loss right now. First step is to identify the issue. Okay, what are the impacts?
I can't pay my bills.
Okay, can't pay your bills.
Lost my job.
I would go so far as line item every item. I can't pay my mortgage. I can't pay my credit card. I can't pay my car payment. I can't pay, boom, 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 boom. All those are monthly bills. What does my monthly budget look like anyways? Because all those become line item issues or impact issues if you lose your job. Now, what are the collateral damages outside of that? What can
Absolutely.
it affect further on down the line?
And I think that's something we need to address with each one of these is, okay, we have the initial emergency, whatever it might be, the initial threat. But there's also, if that takes place, what is the secondary threat, or maybe the tertiary, if you want to call that. But anything to me is secondary to the primary threat. So like if you say there's an earthquake, okay, what else happens? You lose gas, you lose water. Those are all secondary. So the primary one is we don't need to just plan for the primary threat, but what else could potentially happen
what are the
secondarily.
piggybacking threats that could come with that?
There you go. I like that.
Right. And so you write down all the different impacts, right? Also, what are all the collateral damages or the piggybacking effects? And then what you need to identify are what are the resources you have available to mitigate that.
Okay.
Right? Do you have a large savings account? Do you have an IRA or 401k? Do you have, and we're just going over the job loss issue. Do you have something? Do you have a severance package in that job loss? Hopefully, but most of the time, nope, sorry. It's not happening as much as it used to.
I think that's maybe the middle step, the assessing threat. So when you lose your job, that's pretty easy to determine what's going to happen.
Right.
If you lose your job, that's pretty easy to determine. But as we assess some of these other threats, it may not be as apparent. Okay, what's going to happen if this event happens,
Right.
And then we get into managing and mitigating that. Yeah,
Absolutely. But you got to look at your list of resources and put it together, all of your resources, right? You may have a network of people that you're working with that may help you out during that time. You may have ecclesiastical resources that will help provide food or resources or help you find a job. Look at the local temp to hire agencies. Look at all the recruiters. Those are resources, right, in that time. Also look at knowledge and education. What do you need to do to mitigate so that doesn't happen, or that if it does happen, it's lessened? And those things could be simple as I'm putting away an extra 10% every month, so that if there is a time, I've got that for me. Right?
Absolutely. When you're in the good times, you make the plans so that if the bad times come, you've already made those plans. You already have your plan of action.
Absolutely. So when I had a contract that I was working last year that was unable to pay me to the tune of $30,000, I was not destroyed. My family did not go through, we've gone through hardship, but we did not go through losing a house. We haven't had to deal with major losses because we mitigated. We had money saved. We had silver saved. We have a year's supply of food, right? We have a level of skill sets that we can use in different ways to be gainfully employed and to create our own businesses or do other things to keep revenue trickling in if it's not flowing. But hopefully we can all find ways to keep revenue flowing in. And so that's the simple basics of how to put together that action plan, right? The issue, the impacts, and the collateral damages, and then the knowledge and education and resources, right? Those are the key points that I put down in understanding how to mitigate for that type of an emergency or any type of emergency, right? So let's take another topic, for example.
Okay. I think my and mine aren't in necessarily any particular order because, I mean, who knows?
They don't need to be.
Yeah. So I think, and we've probably maybe hashed this a little bit too much, is just natural disaster on previous shows. And, of course, here on the Wasatch Front, our biggest concern is earthquakes. So in preparing this list of threats, I think you need to start with what's the most likely, right? Because we could get into, like you say, with North Korea, they're going to launch a nuke over us, an EMP or whatever. They've got a satellite up in space that could drop an EMP on us at any moment. Sure, I mean that's a threat, but really, how likely is it? And are we wasting our time and our money preparing for those very specific, very unlikely threats when we could and should be preparing for joblessness, first of all?
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I see in a lot of different groups on preparedness or prepping online, they're always talking about the nuke or the finance collapse or a terrorist attack. Yeah, they don't talk about all the likely scenarios. They talk about the most devastating, unlikely ideas first.
And I think maybe the reason they might be doing that is because if you're not prepared for that, you're going to get wiped out completely, right? But if you're preparing for these smaller events, you're more likely to be prepared also for the bigger events.
Absolutely.
You agree with me there?
There's so much crossover in preparedness. It's ridiculous. I mean, the same. Okay, so earthquake. Let's run through the impacts. Okay. Right? So the issue is the earthquake. What are the primary impacts after an earthquake? And
again, I'd lean back towards the survival rules of three. Shelter being right at the top, water, shelter, and food. Right? Okay. Come right into play in that emergency. So first, of course, your home may be damaged. That's your shelter. And you've got your food storage in your basement.
So you may lose your shelter. If you lose your shelter, what is your backup?
Exactly.
Right. That's kind of the collateral damage impacts, right?
But then again, kind of going along with that as well is the secondary effects as well. Your water not working, your electricity not working, your gas. And it may
sanitation.
Sanitation, yeah. These are all secondary, call it tertiary, or I don't know how to say it, fourth or fifth or sixth.
They're all collateral damage issues, right?
Exactly.
We'll chalk them up to collateral damages.
And it's not our intent to list every one of those things off today. It's to help you start to begin a plan and recognize these threats and say, okay, if our house collapses, what is our plan for shelter?
What is your prioritization, right? So let's go back. Let's just say the house is partially damaged, and we lose water, we lose gas, and we lose electric. Okay, so...
And it's winter.
So now what are our resources and what can we do? Now, in your scenario, do you have a backup generator?
I do.
Do you have a stove, a wood stove, or a fireplace, or a heat source?
Multiple different ways to cook and to heat.
Okay.
Not everyone I'd like.
True.
But simple, from a basic camping stove to a fire pit in the backyard. And everything in between, right?
Absolutely. Now, and do you have fuel for those?
Yes.
There's so many different types of fuel you can think of. I look in my garage, and I look in my storage locations, and I say I've got charcoal, I've got lighter fluids, I've got propane, I've got white gas.
I've some briquettes stashed in the shed.
Yep. And so all of those different things, and then I've got firewood chopped. I've got more firewood that needs to be chopped than I have chopped, so I've got a lot to do still. But that wood's still curing, so it's not quite pristine and perfect
Ready to split,
for going into the fire. But those are resources, right? So what resources do I have? List them all off, itemize them, and keep an inventory of them. So I know what I really have. How long can you actually survive on what you have? I've probably got a month and a half, 2 months worth of different types of fuel sources, depending on what we need.
And that's really hard to assess.
That's hard to assess. Really, but you also need to realize that you don't need to use your whole house in an emergency. Minimize the use of those resources so they can last longer, rationing them.
And if you have a rocket stove for cooking, you're going to go through very little wood with that stove. So there's a lot of different aspects.
Or if you've got a Herc oven, you're using a few tea
candles.
Right?
And I think having multiple different kinds of sources and different plans, not just, okay, I only have a propane stove and that's it. Okay, that may work for you for a while, but you will eventually run out of propane, or the stove may break or whatever. So redundancy and backups.
Do you know how to cook on each of those different types of cooking solutions?
You'll learn eventually.
But you could go through a lot of food, burning it and ruining it.
And gas.
And you know, so that's where practicing, when we talk about that all the time, practicing your skills comes into play. But, you know, understanding knowledge and educating yourself on what you can do. You know, so then you look at the resources you have, and maybe you've got some shortages. Maybe right now you don't have anything you can use to warm your home. Okay, well, that's probably your number one priority.
There you go.
Is look for ways to warm your home, heat your home, or keep people warm. And the simplest thing is a non-fuel source wool blanket. Stacked on another wool blanket, stacked on a third wool blanket. You know, just stack on the blanket so you guys can bundle up and stay warm. Get everybody pulled into one room. Keep that room as sealed off as best you can so that the heat stays in there. You know, you've got resources. Use them. Identify what they are and where they are so that everybody knows where they are in the house.
Okay, let's step back a second and realize, okay, we know we do have a threat of earthquakes.
Okay.
How can we minimize that threat? How can we mitigate that threat of our house falling off its foundation?
Well, I think part of that starts in the purchase process of your home.
Exactly where you're at.
Yeah, buying in a safer location, not buying in a flood area, not buying on a shifting
slide area.
And that's hard to do along the Wasatch Front. I mean, there's so many tough areas to do. So then you have to say, okay, well, if this does happen, or I'm in this type of area, assess that, right? That's part of what are the collateral damages.
And if you're aware, then you'll see, okay, this house is in a 1,000-year floodplain. Yeah, it may not ever flood here, but there is a possibility of flooding. Or you're living in a area which may liquefy during an earthquake.
Yeah, liquefaction.
For me, you know, I'm not even considered to buy that house. I mean, I'm on a nice rocky on the hillside up near the fault. I'm in the best possible place you could live for an earthquake in Utah County.
Perfect.
That's where I'm at. And that's what I've done to mitigate that threat. So if you're living down by the lake and you're concerned about earthquakes, then make some plans. Maybe it's a good time to sell right now.
It's a fantastic
it's a really good time to sell.
The other thing is looking at what resources you have locally or where you can relocate to. Who's going to be able to take you in if something happens, say it's an earthquake, and you can no longer live in your shelter, where can you go?
And that's still called bugging out, but you can bug out 2 miles away.
Yeah, you're sheltering in Bob's place, right? You're sheltering
in Grandma's house.
Grandpa's or Grandma's or cousins or brothers or sisters. You know, pooling resources at that point makes it a lot easier to survive as well, but you need to look at the realistic situation. Can you stay in your house? Maybe not. You know, what about sanitation? You know, what's your sanitation plan if you're able to stay in your home? Or if you're able to stay in your brother-in-law's house or someone else's place? Do they have resources there? Do you have to haul all of your resources that are still salvageable to their house? And are you going to have enough fuel to get it over there?
And again, secondarily, if power's out and you live in a low-lying area, the sewer pumps may not work. So you may have to bug out anyway. So, and I think what I'd like to get, I guess we're coming up on our next break here, is to try and identify more of these threats and maybe not necessarily. And this has been, I think, a good example to say, okay, this is how you break it down and mitigate that threat. But let's figure out, let's bring up, these are the other possible threats that you should consider And, of course, we'd love to hear from you guys, what you guys are planning for.
Yeah, if you've got a threat that you're concerned about, maybe we can talk about that on
that
the
we
air.
haven't talked about,
Absolutely.
or you have something to say. Absolutely. We love talking with you guys. Okay, so in the last minute or so and a half, what's the next threat that we think we should jump onto here, Scott? What do you think?
So we've talked about job loss. We've talked about natural disaster, specifically an earthquake. Let's talk about infrastructure breakdown.
Okay.
Right? That could happen through either an economic collapse, a logistics collapse. There could be a cyber attack that causes that, or an EMP.
That's a great point. Is that primary threat could be caused by be a secondary threat caused by financial collapse, like you say,
or it could be a pandemic. Like we could have an outbreak of swine flu that takes down 60% of the population,
and they're unable to operate.
60% of the population can't go to work. How do we have power? How do we have the services? How do we have hospitals? I mean, what is our backup plan for that? I mean, so there's so many different contingencies that you've got to think about. So issues, infrastructure breakdown.
So infrastructure as in what is provided by our community: water, sewer, power, gas.
And oftentimes it's specific
Roads,
to either a county
transportation.
or a municipality, keeping that in mind, right? The most common time something like that happens. Like last year, there was a portion of Logan that had water flooding in basements.
Oh, everywhere, yeah.
And that was just a portion of Logan, right? And that's a city to our north. During the same time of the year, there was a water in another part of the state. I can't remember what city it was. Their water tank had been
ruptured. Oh, contaminated by the flood water. Yep.
Yeah. So different issue, different area, but those are things that can hit. Those are things I want you guys to think about on the break.
Yeah. Let's try and detail some more of these threats on our last segment here, and maybe try and open your eyes a little bit to say, okay, these are some immediate threats that we should begin to plan for and prepare for. So thanks for listening here at Prepper Talk Radio, and we'll catch you guys after the break. Welcome back to Prepper Talk Radio. You're listening to Shane and Scott here on this Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We are talking about threats. When it comes to preparedness, becoming prepared, being a prepper, you need to know exactly what your threats are, and that's what we're trying to address today, is to help you come up with a plan to how to recognize the threats in your area, in our area, and then assess those threats, what impact they may have to you, have to us, and then come up with a plan how to mitigate or to manage those threats. It may be possible, it may not be possible.
Yeah, it's not always possible, but if you can plan on it now, mitigate as best you can now, you're better off.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because you can acquire skills, you can acquire knowledge. Knowledge is the number one thing you need to be going after. I hear people always say, well, I can't afford to do that. You can afford to go to the library because it's free and check out books because they're free. Or if you have internet access already and you're paying for that, you can afford to study online to equip yourself with the right mindset.
Turn off that latest episode of your favorite show and go to YouTube and type in, the subject of the day, managing threats, threat assessment, whatever it is, and you will come up with some instructional videos that will further enlighten you and help you to better prepare. And like they say, knowledge weighs nothing. You can always take it with you. So, I guess another thing I wanted to bring up real quick, not a big concern for us out west, is the nuclear threat. Not just nuclear bombs, but we have to look in our
meltdowns. Right.
Exactly, we have to look in our surrounding our communities, what threats there might be out there. And I know you look at a map of the nuclear reactors from the Mississippi east. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. It's hard to live in an area that would not be affected if there were an emergency. So that is a threat that needs to be assessed. And then, okay, what plans? Do we dig a bunker in our backyard because we live so close and we have no other option to get out of the area? Whereas here in Utah, I think our threats may be, okay, I live fairly close to a railroad track.
Okay.
And I don't know what's going up and down that railroad track, but I've think
seen coal go up and down the tracks. I've also seen fuel go up and down the tracks.
There's tankers, there's tanks that who knows what's in those.
And I've seen lots of cargo containers, so I'm sure there's electronics and all the other fun stuff going to Walmart distribution.
But there could be, chlorine.
Chlorine.
There could be, hazardous waste. Who knows?
Materials.
So you can find those things out. Those resources are out there to so if something, okay, what happens if this train crashes? What is it going to explode into a ball of fire, and or what? So those are threats that you can research and mitigate, as long as you're aware of them. So I just wanted to mention those things real quick. What else do you think, Scott? Where should we go next?
I think the other things to think about, okay, so high-level things are the cyber attack, the grid down.
Okay.
But I think the number one thing is the on-demand lifestyle that we all live and enjoy, right? That could be totally disheveled easily. All it takes is a computer virus or a cyber attack, and that changes our on-demand lifestyle. What if we can no longer use our debit and credit cards because those banking systems frozen for a few days? How do you buy anything? Do you know math well enough that if your cashier can't process your order, you can? It's a silly question, but it's pertinent.
That's some good points, definitely. And, that supply chain could also be, again, like I mentioned, a secondary effect of a larger disaster. I mean, you look back to what happened in 9/11. That affected so many other things. The economy, it affected, and they were all secondary effects of a primary disaster of some sort.
Well, okay, 3 years ago, I think, there was a snowstorm in Bountiful that was so bad that it knocked the power out for 3 days. That's a really localized threat, but it's an infrastructure issue.
Absolutely. Weather.
You can't get down the road. The snowplows can't get everything done. The power's out, so you don't have home electricity. You don't have a way to charge your phone. You don't have a way to heat your home, maybe, because you've got gas for your furnace, but you've probably got an electric blower. So how do you heat your home? How do you keep your pipes from freezing? Do you shut off the water? Like, what is your plan? Like, this is where you need to go back through the list. Okay, what's the issue? What are the impacts? What are the collateral damages? A lot of homes have fireplaces, but then it's a no-burn day. I'm sorry, but screw the no-burn day. My house is going to freeze, and my baby's going to be miserable.
My pipes are going to freeze, and
I could die.
My house.
So light up the stove, light up the fireplace, get things cooking again.
As long as you've got some wood stored there, right?
Absolutely. Well, and if it's electricity's out and gas is still in, if you've got a gas fireplace, everybody's moving into the family room, right? Utilize that gas fireplace to keep everybody warm.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Okay, so another threat that I wanted to, of course, bring up is if there is economic collapse, or say when there is, and when we have more economic hard times, what I think is on my top 5 list is the threat of violence, the threat of increased crime. So that's one thing that I've been preparing my own home for and taking steps to make it more secure, a safer place. Again, kind of going back to we all need a safe place, and that's survival was the 3. We got to have my shelter.
Yep.
And making it a safe place for a potential threat of increased crime and increased gang activity, whatever it might be, and that of course is confined to certain geographic areas.
I thought you were going to say geological.
I know.
You're climbing underground. You've got a bunker?
What? You know it, man.
Encased in granite.
That's right. No, so yeah, it depends on where you live. I live in a nice suburban area, and I would like to think it's low crime, and for the most part it is, but it may not always be that way.
Right.
So I am taking certain steps to prepare and harden and secure our home so that it's a safe place to be.
You're minimizing the potential hazards up front so that you don't have to deal with them as much later, right? If you make your house an easy target, what are the indicators that make a house an easy target?
A nice big wall.
Big wall?
Big wall around it saying, stay out.
No, I'm saying easy target.
Oh, okay. Well, leaving your door unlocked. Leaving your windows open.
Okay. What are other indicators of an easy target house?
Leaving...
Or a lucrative target house?
Leaving stuff out in front of your house.
Like super nice Land Rover.
Okay, there you go.
Super nice BMW parked out front.
In the driveway.
Right. The super nice toys that all the kids leave out in the driveway and on the yard and the grass because they don't care. Okay. Those make you a target desirable place for looters to go, right? Anything that appears to have more than less is a target. Then there's the security issues of locking doors and windows and hardening things.
Just making it so it's not easy.
Yeah.
Most criminals are lazy.
Our good friend Jeff Kirkham from Ready Man, when he was in house with us talking about securing your property, he was like, boulders and rose bushes are my two favorite friends. It makes it hard for people to get into your yard. If you make it hard for people to get into your yard or into the windows, they're going to walk past your house and go to the easy house to get to. They're going to leave your house alone. But also minimizing the size of your home. Do you really need 4,800 square feet? Probably not. And I'm guilty of that. I'm trying to downsize. We just got into this huge opportunity that was such a good buy. Real estate for me is one of my incomes. So we bought it with the intent, hey, we're going to flip it in a few years. But I want to mitigate the dangers of that because it's got so many entrances.
So here's an idea. So that bag of clothes that builds that's going to DI, right, that the kids are growing out of, you stick that in the garage. And so when there's some hard times and there's maybe some looting or whatever, you take that and you spread it all over your yard. Somebody's already looted that place.
Oh, there you go.
So there's already got stuff out of there. So we'll just go buy this place because it's already a mess.
Well, there's also the disaster scenarios with FEMA. You can actually use the CERT or FEMA markings on your house. If people are aware of what those mean, they can say, "Oh, wow!" Danger. You can mark your house. Hey, look, we've got a plague here. A lot of people I've talked to are like, "Yeah, we're going to mark our house so it looks like it's got a plague, so no one that's aware of what that means will go there." But then the question is, how many people are aware of that? Or break down the door and knock out the front windows and bunker into the basement and secure yourself, but make it look like the whole front main level's been ransacked. And so they walk in, they're like, "Oh, there's nothing here," and then leave.
Nothing left,
right? So there's so many different theories, but that's going to the apocalyptic phase, right?
In that side, absolutely.
The other thing is just making sure, like, if you want to secure your home from the threat of someone, just a robber, right? The easiest target is an open garage.
Open garage, front door, windows that are accessible.
No, I'm just saying easiest target for theft is an open garage.
Just walk
people
in, grab
will walk
something,
by,
walk
grab
out.
stuff, right? What are people getting stolen right now more than anything? Besides identities. Besides identities.
Oh, just tools out of the garage?
Shipments that are on the doorstep left by UPS. Yep. Right? That's why the local police stations are now offering for you to have your packages shipped there, and then you can come pick it up with an ID. Right? That's why there are Amazon's starting to do this new thing where you can have a key box code
that they can
open your door with a punch code.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm like, all you need is one crooked UPS guy or one crooked FedEx guy that's like,
wander in and
"Wahaha, I will take this."
Okay, in our last few minutes here, let's acknowledge some other potential threats, at least that are specific to you and me, in our geographic area. I'm going to throw out, in Utah, we've got Hill Air Force Base, right? We've got Camp Williams. We've got the Tooele Army Depot. We've got Dugway. So we've got some military installations that are potential targets. I mean, to whom? Okay, I'm not going to say. I mean, North Korea, whomever, Russians, are potential targets. So I think that is a consideration because we live in, pretty darn close to a location that may, have a bomb dropped on it or have some type of terrorist attack happen to it. And they're pretty high value targets, like Hill Air Force Base in particular.
Okay.
So that is a potential threat that needs some mitigation.
So I was thinking a different type of threat, and I don't think the prepping world doesn't talk about this very often. The loss of a loved one, an immediate loved one, a provider, a husband or a wife.
That's true.
That is devastating to a household. Devastating. So what is the simplest thing you can do to mediate that?
Have insurance.
Have insurance. Life insurance, also disability insurance. I mean, it's so cheap that you can get a few $100,000 coverage that will take care of your family for a couple of years or longer if it gives them enough time to get things taken care of. But my wife and I have equal amounts of insurance on us because it doesn't matter who the income provider is. It doesn't matter who the primary caregiver is. We're both equally important. And so we've mitigated that with we try to save more. We have insurance on both of us for different types of situations and we try to be aware of what could happen. And you know what? We've stopped doing crazy things like skydiving now that we have a little girl.
That's right. That's how you guys met, right?
We met through skydiving, and now we can't go skydiving for a long, long time. Not until they're all grown up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm figuring when I'm 90, if I'm still alive and my wife's still alive, we're going to go skydiving. Because why not?
Yeah.
If we die, we die.
That's one thing I have not done yet. Skydiving.
Wait till the kids are all grown.
I'm going to get myself a squirrel suit. Okay, so another thing I wanted to throw in here as well is depending on where you live, in larger metropolis areas, this may be a bigger deal, but you need, if you have a bug-out plan, you need an escape route, right? So the threat of the human element, call it the Golden Horde, whatever, of people.
The Golden Horde?
The Golden Horde. That's what James Wesley Rawls calls it.
Okay.
The Golden Horde. And so if there is an event, there are people who are not prepared, who are going to be looking, be desperate for food and water and shelter and who knows what. So how do you mitigate that issue?
So now you have to take into consideration the different roadways, the bridges.
Exactly.
Are they collapsed? Are they being guarded? Is there now a toll to go over every bridge?
There
or
we
a
go.
toll
Yeah.
to use every road?
Mm-hmm.
Can you bypass that? What is your community going to do in those scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know your neighbors well enough to know if they're trustworthy and if you can put together an action plan to protect yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thankfully, I've got some pretty awesome neighbors. 2 of them were in an altercation earlier this week, yelling over roofing issues. But that was kind of hilarious. It was just verbal. But
still, I mean, if it gets that way in regular times,
how much worse
if
is it
it's
gonna
in a
get?
stressful emergency situation, it's going to get really bad. So make that a consideration. Is the people around you? If you're in a high an area with a lot of people, high population area, you're going to want to think about getting out and making that, planning your routes out. Another thing I think we touched on it briefly is that is on my top 5 or 6 list is pandemic. And pandemic is on a more national or regional or worldwide level.
With how integrated everything is, it doesn't take much for something to go boom.
Yeah, and we're out of time. So thanks for listening. And we sure appreciate listening, and we love doing this every single week. And please get on Facebook and interact with us and say, hey, we want to hear about this, because that's what we want to talk about, what you want to hear. Take care, and hope you do some prepping activities this weekend.